Hello viewers, welcome to our regular show in CBN24, which is Canadian Bangladeshi News 24, where we always invite distinguished people among the Bangladeshi community and the other communities who are devoting themselves for our community in Canada, all over the Canada and all over in the world. So today we have another distinguished person with us. He is none other than Mr. Blair. So Blair, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased and honored to have the opportunity to join CBN24 for this broadcast.
Thank you so much. In CBN24, the audience, you know already that we sometimes invite this kind of people, distinguished people, and even Bangladeshi people who express their opinion through our conversation, like how they are doing or how they are devoting themselves for our community. And we learn about their activities, about themselves. So before having our conversation today, I want to introduce yourself to our community. So Mr. Blair, I think your full name is William Sterling Blair.
That's correct.
But people very much know you about Blair.
Yes.
So he is a Canadian politician, and currently he is representing the federal electoral district with Scarborough Southwest. Am I right?
That's correct.
Yeah, as a member of parliament. And a very well-known thing for him, like he served the Toronto Police Service almost 10 years.
I was
as
actually
the chief.
As the chief, I was the chief for 10 years.
Yeah, and all over you served
39 years.
39 years. Oh,
Yes.
it's a long time. So my conversation will start with this part, like why you chose career in politics after your retirement from police department.
Well, and I've been asked this question very many times.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, my chosen profession, my career, was in policing. And for 39 years, I served the people of Toronto, first as a police officer, and then for the last 10 years of my career as the police chief.
Yeah.
And the Toronto Police Service is one of the largest police services in North America.
So
It had nearly 8,000 employees, and it was a great privilege to be the chief of police. But perhaps the greatest privilege was to serve my city. I was a public servant, and I was responsible for the safety and the protection of all of the people of Toronto in every community.
Exactly.
And so, having spent my life in that service, when my police career came to an end, I had many choices on what I would do next. I could have gone into business, in the private sector. There are other opportunities that were available. But quite frankly, for me, I had spent my life in service. I wanted to continue in service to my community. And so I've said very publicly that I had hoped to continue to pursue service to my community. And then there was an election coming up, and all three political parties then came and asked if I would run as their candidate. And so I began to consider, is this a good way to continue to serve? And finally I made the choice to run for the Liberal Party in the election that was to take place in 2015. And I sought to run here in Scarborough Southwest. One of the things, and because we are speaking to the Bangladeshi community, when I sought the nomination in Scarborough Southwest, I grew up in Scarborough. I raised my family in Scarborough. My family roots go back almost 60 years in this community. I've also been responsible for keeping this community safe for many years. So every neighborhood was my responsibility. Every child was my responsibility. But when I came to Scarborough Southwest, overwhelmingly, the greatest support that I received in seeking the nomination came from Bangladeshi Canadians living in Scarborough Southwest. And through a number of good friends I had in the community, I was introduced more broadly to the people here. And they were tremendously supportive. And I came to understand how important the Bangladeshi Canadian community is to Canada, to Toronto, and particularly to Scarborough Southwest and the neighborhoods of Danforth, East York.
Right.
Like both of those are two ridings. The riding I share with my friend and colleague Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, and my riding both have very strong Bangladeshi communities, both business communities and residential communities, a lot of community organizations. And so working with Bangladeshi Canadian communities is such an important part of the work that we have taken on.
So how do you enjoy to work with the public now?
I have always worked with the public. As the police chief, I worked for all of the people of Toronto. I was responsible for serving all of them,
Right.
to listen to their concerns and to do everything I could to keep them safe, to uphold the rule of law, but also to preserve public safety in all of the communities. The way in which I tried to do that was very much with the community.
Right.
And so we engaged in what we call community policing. I met very often with different communities and consultative groups, and organized a number of consultative groups. And for example, I had a consultative committee made up of representatives of the Southwest Asian communities,
Right.
including the Bangladeshi,
Right.
but also a consultative committee for the Muslim community, which is a very significant, of course, component of the Bangladeshi community as well. And so I have for decades had the opportunity to have that type of a close relationship. And now, as a public servant elected, as a politician, it's also my responsibility to serve this community in a different way. As a police chief, I held the law and I was responsible for their safety. What the responsibility is as a parliamentarian is to make sure, first of all, that we have good government programs, good government laws,
Exactly.
and that the people of my community, including the Bangladeshi Canadians in Scarborough Southwest, have fair access to the services of the government. And for example, issues around immigration,
Mhm.
taxation, pensions, employment and skills training, all of those services are important services that the Government of Canada provides. And I structured my constituency office in order to serve this diverse community. And I'll tell you something I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
When I first was seeking election, and I went to the Bangladeshi community, they said that they had need of support and services from the federal government. But they said no one that has previously served in this area speaks our language, knows our faith traditions,
Right.
knows our culture and our history, knows our community. And so I made it a promise to them, to the people of this community, that when we established our constituency office, we would make sure that we hired people from within the community that speak the language, practice the faith, know the culture,
Right.
and are known within the communities and are trusted within the communities. And that is exactly what we've established. And I believe as a consequence, my constituency office serves this community very, very well because they speak those languages. They are known in the community. They have a relationship there. And through them, I'm able to communicate and have a relationship
Right.
with all of the people of this community. It's been an incredibly important asset to me, and I think it makes us more effective in our service.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of things like immigration and the settlement and the other
Yep.
thing. Like regarding employment, so what kind of activities you are doing for our community here?
Well, one of the things, there's two particular areas that we think are very important with respect to employment opportunities. And those two lead into a third, and I'll explain them. First of all, for our young people, the first job opportunity that a young person has can change their life.
Right.
It can set them on a path to higher education and into a career. And so we have more than tripled the amount of money that the federal government is spending in this community to create job opportunities for young people, for summer employment. And so we approach all of the social service agencies, community organizations, and from private businesses in the riding.
All right.
And we made an offer to them to provide them with funding so that they could go out and hire students. And so we are paying the salaries of those students. And those students are now employed in this riding. They're our young people, but they're being given job opportunities that would not otherwise have existed. We also know that many people who come into this community and come to this country as new immigrants may not have the necessary job skills that they will need to succeed.
Yeah.
And so we have also been able to secure very substantial amounts of funding. This year alone, in excess of $5.5 million for skills development training for people living in Scarborough Southwest, so that they can go and access these services that will teach them the skills that they will need to find good jobs. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, our government has made a commitment to make significant investment in the growth of our economy, to support industry, to support infrastructure development, to create new job opportunities and through growth. And what we have seen is Canada now has, as a direct result of those investments, one of the highest rates of growth of our gross national product, the GDP, of any country in the developed world. And so we're achieving a great deal of success. That growth creates jobs, and those jobs create opportunity for all Canadians. We're making sure that our young people have that appropriate entry point into the world of employment, that all of our citizens have the skills training that they need to be successful in employment and making sure that there are jobs available for them. And so those three things I think are very significant for all of our community.
Right. So regarding this employment, I have another question. Like, as you mentioned, that new immigrant. Yep. Sometimes we got new immigrant who are very adult, who are, the old people sometimes. Yep. They have a lot of skills back home, but they can't utilize it here. So what you will suggest for them?
And part of the investment we're making in skills retraining is making sure that there is training available so that people can have those the skills that they bring. I know many people who are very well educated, have all sorts of professional credentials that they've obtained from their home country, with engineers, doctors, very lawyers, professional people, but their
bankers,
but their accreditation, their skills are not recognized in North America. That's why it's important to give them some training and to give them entry-level jobs so that they can get recognition of the skills that they possess, so that they can be more successful. I was speaking to a Bangladeshi man who runs a pharmacy in this area, and he said you would be shocked at how many Bangladeshi Canadians are qualified to work in a pharmacy, in a dispensary in a pharmacy, but their skills are not recognized. And he was making a point of training himself, his fellow citizens, so that their credentials would be recognized so that they could be readily employed. Canada benefits from that initiative, and certainly the community benefits from that initiative. And so there's much more to be done, but we do recognize that in order to help new immigrant communities be successful, that they already have great entrepreneurial drive, they have great ambition, they are prepared to work hard. The government of Canada has to do its part to make sure that those opportunities exist for them, and that we provide them with assistance in obtaining that accreditation for the skills that they possess.
So you are working as a member of parliament, and as well as I know that you are the parliamentary secretary in the Minister of Justice.
That's correct.
So what kind of activities you have to do for parliament as a parliamentary secretary?
Well, I work for the Minister of Justice, and the Prime Minister and the Minister of Justice have given me responsibility for certain public safety files, issues around judicial reform, issues around some public safety legislation and drug policy issues, to bring my experience and expertise to Parliament and to guide certain legislative initiatives through. We are taking steps to improve safety in our roadways, for example. We are taking very significant steps to try to create new efficiencies in our justice system. Our justice system is expensive and it's slow, and for many Canadians it's inaccessible because it's expensive and because it's difficult to access. And so we are engaged in a process of judicial reform to improve our system of justice so that it works for all Canadians and it is accessible for all Canadians, but also that we have the laws in place so that those who are responsible for keeping us safe have the legislative authorities, the technologies, the training and the resources they need to be effective in keeping our community safe.
And multiculturalism, so which is the benchmark of Canada, and the world know Canada as a country of multiculturalism.
Yes.
And here in Toronto, which is we all see this kind of thing are happening always. So what do you think, like multiculturalism, how it help the people who are living together here, like the Bangladeshi people and the other people who are living?
I tell you, I've traveled quite extensively around the world. One of the things that I think is most extraordinary about Canada, if you or I were to travel to Germany, to France, or to England, we would not be German, French, or English when we arrived.
Right.
But you can come from anywhere in the world, and you can come to this country, and you can be a Canadian. And Canada will, because of our policy, our official policy of multiculturalism, but just as importantly, because of our values, we will embrace your arrival. We will even change and adapt to accommodate and include new arrivals into this country. Canada constantly changes and evolves. As new immigrants come, it has made us a stronger country. It has made us a better country, a safer country. I was often, when I was the chief of police, I would be asked by other countries, very often, to come and consult. And they'd say, Canada is such a large, diverse country. It is one of the most diverse places in the world. Toronto is perhaps the most diverse city in the world.
Right.
And yet it is, by all measure, one of the most livable and safest city. And I would be asked by these other countries, what is it you are doing as the police chief to make the city such a safe and livable country? And I said, I would like to take credit for this, but the credit really goes to the values of Canadians, because we believe in pluralism, we believe in diversity and respect for all persons. Not perfectly, but better than just about anywhere else in the world. And so when people come to this country, they have an opportunity to join the greater society, and the society will embrace them and accept them. And people here are not merely tolerated, but they are respected. And I think it is, like I grew up in Toronto, and I lived in Canada all my life. I have seen Canada change for the better. And as we became more diverse, and as more and more people came from more and more places around the world, and they bring their languages, and they bring their cultures, and they bring their tradition, and it has made Canada a stronger and frankly a much more interesting place to live. And people used to ask, how can you be so safe when you are so diverse? And I said, it is because we are diverse. It is because all of those different lived experiences, the lived experience of the immigrant, the lived experience of people who have experienced persecution in their home countries or injustice in their own countries, they come here and they want something better. And all of us have come here knowing that something could be better. Right. And my Prime Minister said during the election, in Canada, better is always possible. And I think this is truly a value of our country.
Yeah. And diversity is the strength, as you mentioned.
Well, but it truly is. Like if you see it, it's as I've many times I've had to explain to other officials in other countries. It is not in spite of our diversity, but because of it, that we are such a peaceful and safe place, and why we prosper in the way we do. It's a good place to raise families. And this is a country that, we make sure that families have enough for their children. Right. And frankly, we've made some great progress just in the past year with the new Canada Child Benefit, which really has raised hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty and improved the quality of life for families, certainly in Scarborough Southwest. More than 9 out of 10 families in this community are receiving more support from the government than they were previously. So those things are important, but we also are supporting families. We're trying to support new immigrants. We're trying to help ensure that people are treated with dignity and respect in this country, and to promote those values. And I think the world is paying attention, and I think we can be a good example to the world on how to do this right.
Exactly. So, dear audience, we have a very good conversation with the Member of Parliament of Scarborough Southwest in Canada, Mr. Bill Blair with us. So we have, I have another question, like, as you mentioned about the childcare. So after childcare, you probably saw recent, which is unexpected to us, like some kids from our community who killed themselves, suicide. So, what kind of activities you are taking to improve the mental health, especially for the kids?
This is a huge priority for our government and for our Minister of Health. Minister Philpott has made it a national priority to make greater investment into mental health services and to engage the entire country in a much broader discussion and a recognition. For many years, this was an issue that people were ashamed to talk about. But we need to bring this issue forward, so it's better known. We have in our country a particular tragedy, and it's the level of self-harm and suicide that's taking place in our Indigenous communities. These communities quite often are isolated, and we've seen a terrible tragedy of suicide among young people in those communities. And so we've made very, very significant investments, and we recognize we've done a lot. We need to do more to go into those communities and make sure that those mental health services are widely available in those remote communities. But it's also led us, I think, to a much broader discussion about mental health, particularly among young people, in all of our communities. And we know young people from new immigrant communities. For example, they come in. There can be conflict with the values of the parents that they have brought from their home country to the new values that the child is maybe experiencing in their new community. that can result in isolation and difficulty for those young people. We need to make sure that those supports are there, that there is no stigma for those young people. If they need help, the help is there for them, and that they're able to access that help. And so our government, and our minister in particular, has been working very, very closely with each of the provinces to make sure that there's a greater investment in mental health services and a greater understanding of the importance of that investment and the acknowledgement right across society that this is an issue that can affect all of us. You know, the numbers are really startling. 1 person in 5 across all segments of society. This isn't something that affects only one group of people or one, people in a certain socioeconomic status. It goes right across society, but 1 person in 5 will experience some form of mental illness over the course of their life. And if we had that type of a physical ailment that was affecting that many people, I think it would be a thing that we would talk about more than we do.
Exactly. So it's been almost 2 years you are representing Scarborough Southwest as a member of Parliament. So what will be your next goal, like in the next 2 years?
Well, we're going to continue to work to make sure that we can bring, one of the things I promised the people of this community is that we would advocate for this community in Parliament to make sure that when there is a federal investment to be made, it would be, that Scarborough would be included.
Yeah.
And I'm working very closely. We're very fortunate in Scarborough. All 6 of the MPs in Scarborough are members of the same caucus, the Government's Caucus.
Yeah.
And so we work very closely together to support Scarborough and to advocate for additional resource for Scarborough in our housing, in employment and job creation, in health services, in transit, and all of the things that this community needs to be successful. And so we've been all working very strongly together.
Right.
We're going to continue to do that. I think the government has made a number of promises we still have work to do to keep, and we wish to keep our promises. But I would remind people that I remember very well during the election, the previous government had brought in legislation that created 2 classes of citizenship. Okay. And if you were an immigrant and had achieved your citizenship, that citizenship could be taken away from you. But if you were born here, your citizenship could not. And by creating 2 classes of citizenship, we saw that as a real problem. And so my Prime Minister, my leader, said, a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, and we will change this law. Right. We changed this law. And now all Canadian citizens are equal, which is exactly the way it should be, and a value of this country. And so we will continue to advance those shared values that all of us share, and to work hard to keep the promises that we made to the people of Canada, and certainly that I made to the people of Scarborough Southwest. We promised that we were going to try to bring more resources in for families in the raising of children. We have done that. We promised that we would raise the taxes on the wealthy and lower the taxes on those who were working hard, but we're not as wealthy. And so we've done that. We're making investments in housing to improve the quality of housing, because that's a very significant issue for people. Some of the housing that people live in is not in a state of good repair. And so we're putting a great investment into that. We're making an investment with the city and the province to improve the transit into Scarborough and for all the people, and to make sure that there are jobs and job skills for people to fill those jobs in this community. And that work is not yet done, but I'm pleased with the progress that we're making. And finally, if I may, one of the commitments that I made to this community is that I would have a constituency office that served this community, that worked hard to solve problems for them. And it doesn't matter what their problem is. If somebody comes in and they have a problem, we say that, no, we do not say that's not a federal problem, go somewhere else. All right. We try to help. Exactly. And this has become, my constituency office has really become a place where people can come and get help. Right. We can't solve everybody's problems, but they will always get our best effort, and they will be treated with dignity and respect in this community. And that's, for me, I've spent my life in public service. Right. This is where public service is actually being delivered. Right. And I think that, for me, that's a source of pride, and we're going to continue to work hard at that.
Great. Yeah. So we are almost at the end of our conversation, but before ending our conversation, I have the last but not the least question to you. What messages would you like to deliver for our Bangladeshi community for their prosperity in Canada, in Toronto as well, and Scarborough?
Let me take the opportunity, first of all, to say thank you. To say thank you to the Bangladeshi Canadian community here in Scarborough Southwest for their unwavering support. And support not just in elections, but support through friendship.
Right.
To helping us keep informed and aware of what's going on in the community. And one of the things that we talk about, there are a number of different community organizations, Bangladeshi community organizations, where people are really engaged in their community.
Right.
Like they're engaged in serving their community and advancing the interests of their community and doing things for young people and creating social opportunities for people to be successful and business opportunities for people to prosper. I'm very grateful for the hard work of the Bangladeshi Canadian community in this part of the country, in the support that they have given me, and I want to also pledge to them that they will always have my gratitude and my support.
Thank you so much, Mr. Phil Blair.
It's my pleasure.
It's a very pleasure time that you already talked about everything to our community people. I think they will have everything from your conversation. Like they will learn from your conversation how they will develop themselves in Canada as well. I think it's a very worthy conversation between us, and it's a pleasure from us too, from CBN24. Like as a person, you already devoted yourself 39 years in police department and in politics almost 2 years. So it's been 41 years you are devoting yourself in public service. I can say that.
Thank you for the opportunity that you've given me to speak to the community. I'm very grateful for that.
And as a Bangladeshi community here, as a member or representative of Bangladeshi community here, I also thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the audience, this is our conversation today. We'll have another distinguished person who are devoting themselves in Canada for our Bangladeshi community in the next show. So until that, take care of yourself.